Side Hustle Show 155, how to drive viral traffic from Reddit.
Welcome to the Side Hustle Show, where aspiring part-time entrepreneurs learn how to turn their side hustle dreams into reality. Because your 9 to 5 may make you a living, but your 5 to 9 makes you alive. And now, your host, Nick Loper.
What's happening? Nick Loper here. Welcome to the Side Hustle Show, where it's all about ideas, action, and results. Great show for you today on the art and science of viral traffic. How side hustlers can tap into community platforms, democratic platforms like Reddit to build your business. Now, Reddit is the 9th most popular site in the United States and 32nd most heavily trafficked site in the world, which means it's filled with potential customers, a lot of eyeballs for your business. But at the same time, from my perspective, it's kind of an intimidating place. It's not a site I've ever spent much time on, so I'm not really sure how it all works. But as luck would have it, my friend Brian Swichkow is a tried and true expert in this subtle type of viral marketing. Now, you might remember, longtime listeners of the show might remember Brian from way back in the archives. He was a guest on episode 23 back in 2013. Now, since then, he's driven a metric ton of traffic through Reddit on a variety of different projects, and you start to see a pattern. One time, maybe it's a fluke. Second time, okay, maybe you got lucky. But to do so consistently, maybe there's a system or a learnable process to all of this, and that's what you can expect to learn from this conversation. If you want to learn more about Brian, he runs ghostinfluence.com and the Ghost Influence podcast, all about viral marketing. Really cool stuff. All the notes and links from this episode, plus a free PDF highlight reel from this conversation, are at sidehustlenation.com/Reddit. REDDIT. Ready? Let's do it.
On most platforms, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, whatever it may be, just by nature of what it is and how many people are talking, you have to create a lot of content and you have to do it very consistently. And it can be intimidating in that sense, where you just have to continually create new things and get more views and more views and more views. When something goes viral on Facebook, it doesn't really get the numbers or the stickiness that it does on something like Reddit. And the reason for that is that Facebook users consume, I think it's 660 page views per month on average. About 80% of that is like personalized content. So like content from, all these different things that are just related to the people that you follow. So the discovered content aspect is really only 20%. On Reddit, it's all discovered content. It's not about any one person. It's just all discovered content, and users consume, I think it's 1,300 page views on average per month. So what happens is that people's standards are very high. They've seen a lot of things and their standards are very high. And a lot of people get into Reddit and they think like, oh, I'll just create content like I do on Twitter and Facebook. But that doesn't stick. It's not as interesting. It's not, the 5 things you must know about social media. Here's my article I just wrote. It's brilliant.
That's not going to cut it.
No, not at all. You have to really invest a lot of time. But the great news is that's all about creative process. And it's fun as hell. You get to take the time to say, instead of writing an article a week, I'm going to make one thing every 2 months that's going to be worthy of Reddit. And that could be anything. I've built software, e-commerce stores, ridiculous articles, and it's just taking the time to step back and say, like, all right, this particular community within Reddit or any democratic platform is just obsessed with this one particular thing. So I need to do something that is just so amazingly awesome and cool that fulfills that. And if I can do that, if I can take the time and I have no rush, I can spend 2 months working on this thing, spread out, 15 hours and $100 of work, it really makes a difference. And, I've had some posts that took me, the infamous Facebook prank post was like 15 hours total. And I think $1.70 versus I've had, like e-commerce stores. I needed some help on development, $500 hiring a contractor, and then like 18 hours of time. And 2 months later, 156,000 page views day one.
Okay. Real quick. What was the roommate prank?
I pranked my roommate with eerily targeted Facebook ads. So basically,
you spent $1.70 doing this.
$1.70 torturing him for 3 weeks to the point where he thought that someone was following him and giving information to Facebook, most notably the NSA.
Okay, and then the recap of that story was what you posted on Reddit and went viral.
Yeah, so about 6 months after it happened, I did it solely for two reasons. Well, three. I wanted to screw with him because he had screwed with me first, was the first reason. The second was that I was at the time learning Facebook retargeting, and I wanted to see if it was possible. I had no earthly idea. And three is I just like pushing the limits of pretty much anything and being ridiculous. I didn't do it to write about it. I had no intention whatsoever to write about it. And as evidence, I didn't write about it till 6 months later.
Yeah.
When I decided to launch a blog, and I told this story 100 times at conferences and bars and to my mom.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of had come to realize it was funny. And so anyway, so I wrote about it, and it went viral on Reddit. Didn't have an email list, didn't do any paid marketing, didn't tell my friends. I just posted it on Reddit very strategically. Spent a lot of time kind of prepping. I had 450,000 page views in the first 3 days.
Wow.
And that's carried for, at this point, about 18 months. I still get people who are like, oh my God, you're that guy. I want to hire you. And I'm like, really? Okay.
It's the most random. It's the most random stuff. So a couple distinctions. First off, so Facebook, Twitter, Instagram are kind of like people are following other people and brands, or their friends and brands.
Right.
Versus Reddit, people are following categories or topics that they're interested in.
Right. So I call them brand platforms versus community platforms. So a brand platform, someone makes the decision, the choice to listen. They go, oh my God, Kim Kardashian is the coolest human in the entire world. Hashtag sarcasm. And if they follow her and then decide that she's a ridiculous human, then they can unfollow. They can stop hearing what she has to say. They have that choice. A community platform, you join a community and you see everything within the community regardless. So if someone, and anyone could submit to it, if someone submits something that's not relevant to the beliefs and the ideas of the community, then it's seen as a violation of just kind of personal space, essentially. It's like your roommate leaving a bunch of dirty dishes in the sink. It's like, we share this space and you're treating it like crap.
Okay.
So it really is about bringing the best thing to that community that you can.
What types of side hustle businesses are ripe for... You have me at like, hey, I don't have to write a post every month. I can do something epic every 2 months. Like, that sounds like potentially less work and more fun. But what kind of businesses are best suited to try and tap into this traffic source?
Honestly, the easiest determinator is passion and story. If someone gets into something, and I have people approach me all the time. They say like, oh, I'd love to do something with Reddit. And, it's like, oh, what do you do? It's a review site. And I'm like, okay, it's kind of dry. They did it because it was a good opportunity that they could rank in SEO for a specific niche and make some money. And there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
It's just not for Reddit. It's not unique. It's not top tier. It's not interesting. Versus if you have a personal brand, if you have a really vibrant corporate brand. There's one of the guys that I interviewed recently, shirtwascash.com. My favorite Reddit submission of his was his AMA, where he said, I'm Anon from Shirt Was Cash. I broke 40,000 in sales before my Shopify trial expired, which is a 14-day trial, entirely through Reddit. And there's a lot of personality to that brand, and it's all passion. He did it because he wanted to buy the shirts. If you have a story as to why you got into doing what you're doing, that's usually a really good indicator. Alternatively, something that has a lot of story attached to it. So someone, was it you, Nick? I think you're talking about the hostel?
Oh, I think we were looking at that the other day, and that was one of the top things, like how my hostel got ranked number 1 on TripAdvisor in a year or something.
Yeah, that's what it was. And so, my idea for that is like, if you have a bunch of travelers coming through your business all the time, that's a lot of stories. So talk to them, ask them questions. You'll find some crazy ones. If I was driving for Uber, you ask questions, you find out these like crazy things about people. That's content. That's like really interesting content. But if it's purely based on the opportunity to make money, that's a really easy way to say that Reddit is not the platform for you.
Okay. I'm thinking like for people who are running e-commerce businesses. So the shirt Shopify thing, I got to look that one up. I'm not familiar with it. So e-commerce might be an opportunity, but less, unless it's like a crazy inventive product, more from like the here's how I did it. Like, where do you see that one?
There's a lot of opportunity in communities like our business and our marketing and our entrepreneur and startup. And
So these are all like Reddit subcategories.
Yeah, they're all subreddits or communities within Reddit.
Okay.
So there's Reddit, the community as a whole, and then there's sub-communities. So think of it like a country and states, and then neighborhoods.
Okay.
So, there's an opportunity there to say, like, you'll see things all the time of, I can't believe we just broke 2 million in sales, and to think that I started this in the part-time, like AMA, like ask me anything.
Okay.
That's great, but you can only do it once, and B, it's kind of linear in terms of how you can speak about it, and there's a lot of people that do really well with that just say, here's my business, ask me anything. They have fun, they make connections, they talk to other people like them, and that's great. But if you're talking about, there's really two ways to leverage Reddit. The first way is the way that most publishers do it, which is that they look for the really popular content and then they essentially steal it and publish it on their platform. I'm not going to say I agree or disagree with that, but my perspective is, why not create the content that they're stealing? And that's what happened with the Facebook prank and kind of how everything has been designed since, is that if you create something that's so good that Reddit loves it, then publishers come in and they say, like, oh man, this is really great, I should cover this. And then they're essentially just giving you free press. You don't have to know anyone. You don't have to pay someone to write about you. It's literally just you win over Reddit, and then all these publishers will tend to swoop in and syndicate it everywhere. 30 days after I launched the Facebook prank article, I had like 38,000 backlinks.
Wow. Just because it got picked up by news as more and more people were exposed to the story.
Exactly.
Okay, so it sounds like it may not be the most direct, like I'm not going to find customers necessarily, but like the residual effect, like I'm going to throw my stone into the lake and watch where these waves end up.
Yeah, there's a lot of ways to do it, and that would be one. You can absolutely get customers from Reddit. And in a recent interview, actually, I just posted it today, was Illusionist that made a portable flamethrower. It's a kind of magic supply company. It got picked up by a fan. A fan was on their email list. They were like, this is amazing, submitted it to Reddit. It went viral, and they had a very large number of sales. And basically after that, about a year later, they came out with version 2, which was smaller and more concealable. And now you're talking about something that's smaller than a deck of cards and can mount to the inside of your wrist and your shirt cuff and shoot flames. Coolest thing ever.
What could go wrong?
Yeah, exactly. So all of this traffic and all of these sales were driven through Reddit last time. Let's submit to Reddit, ourselves. So before it was submitted just by someone who found it and thought it was cool and submitted it. They then submitted it themselves. They broke a whole bunch of rules. Each community has its own rules. It's very important to know those before submitting. And they got banned, and the content got banned, and their site got banned. So literally you couldn't talk anything about this, even though everybody had found it in various ways and wanted to submit it themselves. They couldn't even discuss it because the people who made it did such an atrocious job of submitting it that the moderators had banned that topic. And then afterwards, it was picked up and submitted to different communities and did very well. And it again hit the front page, and they learned and they said, wow, we have to respect the platform and kind of respect who we're talking to. So, you can get sales. You absolutely can. That's Shirt Was Cash. That's how his whole business is structured, is he engages with people. He has fun with people. He's a part of the community, and that leads to sales. From a personal branding standpoint, if the formula that I used and have kind of continually used is to do something ridiculous and absurd, but execute it very well and make it look unnecessarily professional, to the point where people start to question, wow, if he does this, when he's, drunk and not getting paid by anyone, then what's going to happen if he's sober and I give him money? And it works because people see you kind of executing your professional talents in your personal time, then they see you in a different light and they respect your talent a lot more, which is one of the biggest ways that personally I like to leverage Reddit, because it's just an opportunity to make cool and then have people respect you for how that was created, no matter what it was.
You bring up a good point with the flamethrower thing about the fine line between, hey, I made something cool, check it out, and hey, I made something cool, buy it. And It seems like maybe that's where the intimidation of the platform comes in. Like, what would be, when is it okay to post your own stuff? And when does that, cross the self-promotional line or self-promotional rules or whatever?
It depends on the community. Some communities don't allow self-promotion and some do. It depends on what you're submitting. I had someone the other day who, they had something that they wanted to share, and it was the actual content of what it was absolutely fantastic. The reason that it was created, not so much. The reason that it was created was more because of an opportunity of like, I see this thing happening in the media. I'm going to create this thing that is attached to that so that I can leverage and get people to see my stuff. And the content was just absolutely magnificent. Like if you look at that alone, it was phenomenal and by itself would do magnificently on Reddit. But if you submit it with this, like, I saw an opportunity to create a thing, like you can't take that voice out of it. So it's a lot more difficult. And then you get into this place where you're lying essentially to say like, I was deeply impacted as a child by this thing. And so when I saw this in a media, I created this, which those are the stories that do well. But if it's a lie, then the second that someone finds out or even gets an inkling that that's the case, then it's going to work the exact opposite for you. So, I mean, it depends. And that's the most difficult thing with Reddit is it really does require this critical thought process of where am I submitting? What are their rules? What is doing well right now? What do all of those things have in common? Is it the way that they're presented? Is it the type of content? Is it the timing? What is it that makes these top posts do well on this specific community? And then figuring out either how you can create something to fit that, or how you can frame what you've got to better fit that. And so from a self-promotion standpoint, like I built, or, this is my, or whatever, whatever it may be, it's very clearly that the creators posting it is very humble. And very modest and very kind of like, hey, I'd love to see what you think of this. Not like I created this thing. It's the best thing ever. It's really amazing. Everybody should check it out. Right. It's there's no command. There's no authoritative voice. It's really, truly just a decentralization of importance so that when you're submitting something, it's not like, I made something cool. It's, hey, like, I'd love to have you guys look at this. Kind of palms open, just like contributing to the community. I brought you a gift. Okay. And so with that, I submitted, and I think the title was, I got drunk with a friend and tried to come up with the most ridiculous email address to give out at a bar, then made this. And it was a website that allowed anyone to register whatever email they wanted at yourplacetonight.com, so they could use it as a cheesy pickup line. Okay. And it was a drunken idea. And I was like, holy crap, I should make an app. And then I was like, holy crap, I should submit it to Reddit. And then I was like, I could probably make money with this somehow. And so that the money came after. The money thought came after. How can I leverage this? Came the last piece of that. And it ended up being that I partnered with a web host that was able to handle the traffic that was generated, which was significant, and put a cheeky little, Reddit hug of death prevented by, and linked their website at the bottom. So, it wasn't like, I'm going to, create this really cool thing and drive a ton of traffic and promote this web host. What can I do? It was drunken idea. And then hold on a sec. There's probably going to be a lot of people that want to use this.
So it sounds like the first step may be for people to kind of embed themselves in that community. Like it seems like if your first post is like, hey, check out my thing, that could be a red flag. So you have to like kind of spend some time in there to see what the culture is like, and be a part of it.
Yeah, it's a bit like a house party if you think of it on a massive scale. So, you walk in and there's different groups of people standing in different areas. One group might be 2 people, one might be 20. And if you jump around very rapidly amongst all the groups, you're never going to really know what conversations are being had. You're not really going to know who's talking. It's very surface level. You're not actually going to be there because the party is not the house. The party is the conversations within the house. And so if you're constantly bouncing around, you never actually have those. And so if you jump into a conversation of, let's say, 10 people, and they're talking about, Bob's dog and how he has a, Instagram with 20 followers, and it's just the most adorable thing, and you jump in and say, my dog did this really great thing, like right off the bat, as soon as you walk up, if you just jump in, it comes off as very like, Bob was telling a story. Like, you don't even know what we were talking about for the last hour. Like you just came in and made the conversation all about you. It's very selfish. It's very invasive. And so you really do. You have to embed yourself and learn. And, the way that you do that is you find some subreddits that are varied. If you're doing online business, check out the e-commerce ones, check out the marketing ones, check out the business ones. But also if you, like e-commerce, you might also like dogs, and check out, our awe and, like our dogs. And I mean, there's specific subreddits for specific breeds of dog. But the reality is that no one is just a professional person. So if you go to Reddit and you only subscribe to things that are like, professional, like all marketing and startup and entrepreneur and so on and so forth, it's kind of very clear why you're there.
How much time would you recommend somebody starting out spend on here a day? It seems like you could get sucked in and use up all your free time.
I am a big fan of Pomodoro, so I recommend 25 to 30 minutes a day.
Okay. And
it's honestly and I recommended this to someone in Ghost Influence the other day. He really wanted to jump in very quickly to some book related. He's an author, and he wanted to jump into some book related communities. And he's like, what should I create? And I was like, well, you need to jump in and be a part of the community first. And I kind of pushed him into that. And just today, he sent me a link, and he landed the top comment on a post that hit the front page, which essentially means that you've said presumably the most impactful and contributed the valuable contribution to the conversation aside from the person who submitted the original post. And it was a great comment. He spoke the community voice. He really just kind of captured the essence of how people were responding, and everybody was like, oh yeah, totally. And they jumped on it and they had a conversation. And he's like, oh, now I get that. Once you land that and you say something, again, the metaphor is that if you say something that, you're in a group of people and Bob's talking about his dog's Instagram, and then you make a comment and everybody in the group's like, oh yeah, totally. You add to that conversation, and then you kind of establish yourself a little bit, and you understand what the group values. If you know comedy, it's the yes and principle. You always want to add to that conversation.
Okay. Do you see freelancers like going into communities that are made up of like their target market and trying to maybe not necessarily drive traffic, but like be of service or kind of start relationships there?
Oh, absolutely. But never in order to convert. So I'll give a few examples. One is I was just bored one day, and I was like, I'll practice my Reddit skills. So I jumped onto our marketing, and I just found this guy, and he submitted and he said, are we getting screwed? Like this ad agency, da-da-da. And basically 3 brothers, e-commerce store, they kind of bared a lot of information, and they were about to hire a marketing agency. They were very suspect of their pricing model. And I jumped in, and I think like a 2 or 3 paragraph response of like, oh, well, this is pretty normal, but 15% is a little high, and just 3 paragraphs of feedback. Mm-hmm. And then at the bottom, I said, for some cred, like you want to know who you're taking advice from. I said, for some cred, this is me. And I linked to the Facebook prank that I had done. And they responded, and they're like, that's so funny. Like, I know that. So I had a little bit of credibility. And then they responded with like 3 paragraphs, kind of, thanking me, but then also asking more questions. So then I responded with 3 more paragraphs. And we went back and forth, I did 3 messages, they did 3. And at the end of it, I was like very, 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 very passively, because this was actually the first time I ever had really, air quotes, pitched consulting services. And I said, if it's something that you want to discuss more in private, more than happy to see if I can get you in the right direction. And I, put my email. I said, Brian, and then parentheses at, like, it wasn't a link. It was just like, written out. I got like 8 emails. Like all these people were listening, and they were like, oh, I just saw, I didn't mean to jump in and grab your email when you were giving it to him, but I just wanted to like say, and I'd say like 8 of them, I'd say 3 or 4 were just, appreciating the advice and, saying hi. 4 of them were legitimately interested in hiring me. And that was for 30 minutes of my time.
Yeah. Would you say, like, if you're a freelancer or like a service provider or something, would you share client success stories with with their permission? Say like, hey, and there seems to be like a title structure that works, but like you said it with your at your place tonight, it wasn't like, would you like an email address? It was like, hey, I got drunk, I made this. Like it was, and there seems to be something to that. But do you see an opportunity for like posting kind of case study type stuff up there?
So there's two pieces to that. So the case study aspect, that is like, if you go from lurking on one end, which is just non-contribution, non-engagement, to complete self-promotion on the other end, that's on the complete self-promotion side. Because regardless of how valuable case study is, the fact that you're showing like, hey, like this person had great success, by the way, I was responsible for all of it. There's no way that you can frame that to not be really narcissistic. And in a different context, it wouldn't be. On Reddit, it just kind of always is. So I would recommend against. The Facebook prank thing that I did was a case study. It was a ridiculous, absurd, story-based, absolutely just played out story. But at the core of it, I was teaching Facebook ads. And my favorite comment, someone said, not only is this hilarious, but I actually learned something about Facebook ads too. And I'm like, great, that was the point.
That was the whole point.
So avoid the case study that's kind of the dry, like, you know, here's a person who had a really great result and it was because of me, and push more towards, again, at first, at least, give effective contributions. So jump in the comments, answer questions, give feedback. More along the lines of your question about title, go to a community, read the rules. Let me say that again. Read the rules. And then once you read the rules, you'll understand how that community works, how they think, what they don't like, what to avoid. So read the rules and then sort by top and look at the top posts of the month, the year, whatever it may be, and look for the common elements. Look for, you know, like these are the, you know, top 10 most upvoted posts in this community over the last year. What do they have in common? Our Tinder posts are very vague. They lead in. They're kind of clickbaity, and they tell jokes essentially. Our gadgets is very analytical. This is the iPhone this is the new iPhone processor on a pencil stick. Like, you know exactly what you're getting. So each community has a different way of communicating. So before you submit anywhere or comment anywhere, you really do need to understand that.
Okay. A couple times I've seen, you know, traffic spikes, and when I dive into analytics, I find like, oh, this is coming from Reddit. And so, of course, I click and see what is going on. And I see that someone else has posted like a podcast episode or something. Most recently, it was the flea market flipper guy. Somebody had posted that episode on there. And, you know, there was some interesting discussion going on. But then, you know, a day later, it's done. It's back to normal. And so I'm curious, you know, is that one-time spike of traffic valuable? I mean, you found ways to make it so, but it's like, do they stick around? Like, does it convert, or is it just like, you know, it's a ton of people, and I just got to play the numbers game. A certain percentage of people are going to become subscribers of mine, and most of them aren't.
It's a question I get all the time. It's probably the first question that anyone asks.
Sorry, I saved it for the end.
No. And it's a hard one to answer because, you know, from my perspective, and I would add on to that, Blake Jameson of Tinder Hacks interviewed on the podcast, Richard Littauer of The User is Drunk interviewed on the podcast. The list goes on. But basically these situations where you create one piece of content and it does really well. So front page, right? Mm-hmm. You get this massive burst of traffic, and then it dies down. It just, I mean, and I can show you graphs on graphs on graphs of these massive spikes, and then it just dies off like 3 days later. Yep. But then the second wave comes when the media picks it up, and that usually lasts for a few weeks. And then you kind of, if you do it right, and it happened with the Facebook prank, it happened a little bit with Tinder Hacks, a lot with The User is Drunk, essentially you kind of become a part of discussion. So with the Facebook prank, anytime someone's talking about like pranking or like, why the hell am I being targeted with this on Facebook, or, you know, like, you know, the eerily, you know, targeted Facebook ads, I become a part of the conversation. I see mentions on a daily basis where people go like, oh, you remember that time? And people continually link to it we're talking, this has now been 18 months since that happened. Okay. So that's the first thing that I'd say, is that if you do it right and you focus on the content, you make something unique, and you do well with it, that lingers. People constantly refer back to it or bring it up or link to it in other content. So that's the first thing that I'd say. The second is that, you know, a lot of people think like, oh, you know, I just got 100 people to my site, you know, from Reddit in 10 seconds or 1,000, 10,000, whatever it may be. But the bounce rate was shit, and they didn't stay, and I didn't get, you know, I got 10,000 people came and I got, you know, 10 signups. Yeah. That's fine. Reddit is a very different kind of traffic. You want to entertain everyone who sees the content. Like you want to entertain, educate, engage. You want to fully engage them, but know that like 5% or less are actually going to move beyond that. And that is perfect. With the Facebook prank, I didn't push an email sign up, but I think my list at the end of that was like 2,000. And that's out of 500,000 people in 3 days. But those 2,000 people were the most avid, interested, engaged, and just amazing people in general. They were, I'd send out an email. They would just all respond back and say, look, I'm working on this. I'd love some help. Let me refer a client to you. I mean, I cannot begin to explain how valuable those people are just as humans on the earth. Percentage-wise, it's going to be different, but the type of people who stick after that big surge are the right people.
Yeah.
You know, it's actually this really interesting filter where, sure, you can get a lot of people into a piece of content or into your site, but if you do it right and you focus on really pleasing everybody, but at the same time making sure that only the right people stick around, you know, if you really do think of it like a strainer, that's what's powerful.
All right, you convinced me. Brian, thank you so much for joining. I think we should wrap it up here. Definitely some things to think about how to leverage this massive platform. I know that's one of the ongoing themes of Side Hustle Nation is to go where customers and buyers already are. You know, those marketplaces that already exist, the Amazons, the Udemys, the iTunes of the world. And Reddit's a little bit of a different animal, but it's kind of too big to ignore. And so I think it's kind of a cool opportunity to look at. Brian's at ghostinfluence.com. And we should wrap this up with your number one tip for Side Hustle Nation. Do you remember what you said in 2013?
No, I don't.
I'll read this back to you and see if you agree or if you have a new number one tip. You can do anything if you stop trying to do everything.
I would build on that because I kind of every year I try and build on my goals, build on how I look at things, and it weirdly plays into it. Never expect your audience's standards to be lower than your own.
All right.
Focus on creating that one amazing thing.
All right. Well, I've got some work to do, Brian. You give me some food for thought, and I kind of like it. So thank you so much, and we'll catch up with you soon. All right, I hope you got some ideas on how you can begin to tap into the giant Reddit community or the relevant subreddits for your niche or industry from that conversation with Brian. Again, you can learn more about all this viral marketing stuff over at ghostinfluence.com and Brian's Ghost Influence podcast. I think my biggest takeaways from the conversation were to listen first and speak second. And when you do speak, comment or contribute on other people's content or threads before submitting your own stuff. And to be a member of the community and just not go in, guns a-blazing, promoting your own stuff. It's a time investment like any other platform, but as Brian explained, it's a platform with a big upside, both in terms of networking and traffic, but also in terms of the residual influence and awareness. And I think that's just a result of Reddit's position as one of the most highly trafficked sites in the world. Now, as is per the usual, compiled a free PDF highlight reel with all of Brian's top tips from this call at sidehustlenation.com/Reddit. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Hope your 2016 is off to an awesome start. Until next time, let's go out there, make something happen, and I'll see you in the next edition of The Side Hustle Show. Hustle on.
Thanks for listening to The Side Hustle Show at www.sidehustlenation.com.